Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 68 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can. Whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game up to the next level. I am Sara.
And I am Rob.
How are we doing, Rob?
You know, I'm...
Don't answer that.
Yeah.
I know how we're doing.
It's all a game of survival.
Today has been a day from hell for just about all of us, and we are going to put all that aside. This is our weekly therapy.
Yes. We're here.
We're here. We're together.
Yes.
We're alive. We are indulging in a hobby. We've got our friends in the live chat. We've got our listeners listening to us after the recording. Thank you all. We love you. You make this so worth it. And holy hell, can this day just be over?
Yeah. Yeah, that's not a bad way of putting it. That's not bad. Can we just move on past hump day?
Yeah. Yeah, just get past it.
Man. All right. Are we getting into the topic?
Yeah, we can get right into the topic. You got anything else?
Well, no, I was just going to say, we've started doing this pre-show music since our last episode, and I'm thinking I'm going to continue it, because a few people were saying that it was a little weird getting in the stream if there was nothing being streamed.
Yeah, the live broadcast seems to clip if we just jump right into the broadcast.
So we figured we'll just we'll give you guys a little bit of pre-music, some stuff, the tracks that we find, stuff that we didn't necessarily use for the show, but are interested in, and if you find something you like, maybe you'll end up using your game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but other than that, we have a show to talk about starting new things.
Yeah. So I'd come up with an idea a little bit ago, and it was just a kind of a passing idle thought. You and I, we've mentioned a couple times on the show, are really big fans of The Division.
Yes.
The video game.
Yes.
Specifically The Division 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was watching one of the YouTubers, streamers that is in the community, and he'd gone back and was playing actually the first game. Mm-hmm. They had a mode in there called Survival.
Yes,
and it had some elements where, like, it takes place in a blizzard, so you've got to manage things like your temperature and stuff like that.
Right.
And he was talking as he was playing the game about how when the game was first introduced, how it looked like it was going to have a lot more RPG elements than it actually turned out. It turned out to be kind of a looter shooter. So just run out, shoot, get loot, rinse, lather, repeat. But, I'd been following the game since it was announced at E3 so many years ago. And originally that's what I thought, too, was it was going to be kind of this post-apocalyptic sort of role-playing game with a lot of, like, survival elements to it and such like that.
Sure.
And so my thought process immediately went from, man, it would have been really cool if the video game offered us this role-playing experience, and then immediately jumped to, wait, hold on a second. I literally have a podcast about a role-playing experience.
About taking any story and slapping it into any system and making it work for you.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is a really elaborate, vivid world, and, like, why couldn't I capture that feel in a game?
How is it any different than Elder Scrolls?
Right, exactly. And that's exactly what I did with the Elder Scrolls, was looked at the game and went, this needs to be fleshed out more outside of the bonds of its own programming and out of its own gameplay loop.
Yeah.
I should take it to the tabletop. And so I looked at the Division. I said, we should probably, we could do the same thing. But how would I capture that feel? It wouldn't be D&D.
No.
By far wouldn't I. Even the modern versions of D&D that are out there, I don't think would work well for the system. And that got me thinking about, what system would. It got me poking around for different systems and stuff like that. And I landed actually on Savage Worlds, which if you're a part of the Discord, you saw a little bit of discussion going on about that. One of our Patreons, Draven, was actually mentioning that, he'd run Savage Worlds. You were telling me that one of our other Patreons, Overwatch, also has run Savage Worlds in the past. So, I got a little bit of, I did a little bit of my own research. I asked Draven about that. He gave us a little bit of his input. So, but that kind of leads us into today's topic of, like, okay, I've never run Savage Worlds before, and other than Draven and Overwatch, I don't know anybody who has played it.
Right.
So how would I bring that new game, even one that I haven't even played or run yet, and introduce that into our group?
Well, and I think you could even roll back a step in the selection process a little bit, because knowing what you want to get out of it
Right.
is also important, because what you're not only doing is you're not just taking a whole, it's not like you're grabbing 5th edition for the first time in a module and saying, okay, now I need to find a group. We're talking about whole cloth, like I've got an idea.
Yeah.
And where do you take that idea and kind of dissect it? I mean, you stepped right into it by saying, like, what type of game you wanted. So I think as a storyteller coming from that aspect, you're defining the feel of the game, that gritty realism that you were kind of talking about, that it's not pulp, it's not horror, so you're kind of niching yourself already through systems and design. I mean, it's gritty realism, so like 7C isn't going to work necessarily. It's a little too heroic.
Right.
Right. So even if you're just looking at system feel, you're kind of having to narrow down that field a little bit and determine how you want the feeling. And you even talking about, like, 5th edition really isn't going to work because it is tactical realism that's going on there more than anything else. It doesn't give you all the elements that you wanted out of it necessarily.
Well, it is actually the tactical that I wanted,
but
not Dungeons. I don't want a reflavored reflavored fantasy game essentially to play a tactical future tech.
Okay.
Post-apocalyptic game.
Fair
that
enough.
Takes place in essentially modern age.
Right. So, I mean, but you have other flavors out there. You've got Star Wars system.
Well,
You've got, which do have tactical elements to them. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, you're talking about how you wanted more role-playing elements to it and how you wanted that to be incorporated. And that really does weigh into the setting and the system that fits well with that setting.
Right.
So, I mean, you're kind of narrowing things down, and some of it is a matter of knowing those different systems. The other is doing a little bit of research like you did, and coming upon Savage Worlds. I'm not saying that there probably isn't another system out there that would fit it even better.
Oh, yeah. I got probably a dozen names in just a half hour worth of searching.
Right.
But Savage Worlds seemed to be the one that most people kind of agreed on, and I knew it was a little more popular of a system.
Okay.
I'd actually seen it played. The Critical Role crew did a one-shot of called Undeadwood that was basically set in the Weird West.
Okay.
Of Deadlands, basically. In fact, Deadlands actually is using the Savage World system nowadays.
So I think then you're starting to, I mean, you did it naturally, because again, it's organic. It's not like you haven't done this before with another system.
Yeah.
With another setting. So it comes down to, okay, so now that you've got this little breadth of systems that you've kind of got ideas about, how crunchy are those numbers? How tight are those rules? Do you have to find something that is defined as tech, like Shadowrun, and then, scrape off the world on top of it and apply your own, and then remove elements? Or do you take something that's a little more freeform, that's got a little less guts to it, that's tied to specific things, where, like in your case with Savage Worlds, you said, there are systems in there for basically saying it's not magic, it's tech.
Yeah.
It's literally just a translation of word. Whereas something like Shadowrun, you've got hard and fast rules for its internet, for its different systems for magic and powers and psychic things and stuff like that. So it's very specified in how those things work, and it's hard for you to scrape out what you need without it being a challenging system to reweight.
Exactly. Knox is actually saying in the live chat right now, kit bashed system.
Yeah,
and that was a consideration.
Yeah, totally.
It was absolutely a consideration, but I don't like kit bashing. I don't like homebrewing things if I don't have to, because what I find is I can write all the rules, but then now I need to essentially write a new player's guide for you guys, saying these are the rules we're playing by, these are the rules we're ignoring, and the gaps in the rules, in the balance of the system that ignoring certain rules leaves, are now being accounted for in this way.
Right. And that, I think there are people who lean into that and who are very good at doing those kind of balancing games in their minds. I am not one of those numbers people who could do that. So if you're going to go into something like this where you have a setting in mind that doesn't fit an existing system, and or it's an existing system, so for instance, maybe you really love Ravenloft, but you don't want it to be tactical. Like you want to tell more of a story. There's no reason why you can't take Ravenloft and run it with Vampire the Masquerade rules.
Yeah, that's
There's
true.
nothing wrong with that.
That's true.
So, and it's going to be much easier because now you have a rule set that is literally designed. Mm-hmm. And you can work with that and just relabel things.
It's designed around horror storytelling involving vampires.
Yeah. But there's also nothing to say you couldn't just run it with Fate. Yeah. Or something very thin.
Ravenloft with Dread.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes the rules lighter systems require more from the players, not so much from the storyteller or the GM or the DM, depending on how heavy you're getting into that role. So a lot of that goes into it when you're talking about the crunchiness of the rules and how much weight goes on to you as a storyteller to occupy the players and make sure they're following the rules and that they have the rules they need so they're within a guideline versus it being free form and saying it's very narrative. We're going to play this together and we're all going to have a good time, you know. So in your sense, we can continue through this lovely story, but I guess the next thing is that now you've got this great idea. How do you know your players are going to like it?
Right.
What players do you choose?
You've narrowed down your game system now, and you have to sell it to them, essentially. Yeah. And some people are not going to like the idea.
No.
I mean, I've shopped around ideas, and like I'm very used to my boyfriend supporting me in pretty much all of my gaming endeavors. And I came up when I was really big into Dread, like last year. I came up with the idea of like, hey, you know, around Halloween, what if I run a Cthulhu style one shot using Dread? Doesn't that sound like a great idea? And he was like, eh. I was like, really? Eh? And he was like, yeah, I don't really do horror. But I mean, yeah, grab your friends. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun for them.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess that's...
When your cheerleader dies down a little bit for you.
Not every cup of tea, okay.
All right.
Okay, yeah, you know, and it really kind of made me... It was that moment where it was like, oh, wow, yeah, actually that horror game really isn't for everyone. Mm-mm. And then it got me immediately thinking of, like, Vicky. Like, your wife would not enjoy that game.
I mean,
whatsoever.
I ran something just a little bit scary in my last session, and she was already like, nope, out of it.
Nope.
Like, player noping it right out.
Yep, exactly. So, which makes me self-conscious about my particular horror elements going on in my game now. But
it's gonna be different.
Yeah.
But also it's preparing the players and getting that buy-in.
Yeah.
You know.
I think it's also about how the player is positioned in the in that horror story as well. Mm-hmm. If they're in a position where they can exert force on the horror, then it's less scary.
Right.
You know.
Right.
If you've got a +1 longbow.
Yeah. And you're literally just taking things out left and right.
Exactly.
Sure. But yeah, I think a lot of that comes, and we've talked about that with the way that you can take a horror situation and make it Scooby-Doo. Mm-hmm. Or make it Silent Hill.
Right.
Like, that's all horror.
Oh, yeah.
And realistically, the monsters don't need to change within that. Mm-hmm. It's how you portray them.
Exactly.
It's the music you use. It's the attitude you take when you present it with your players.
But not just horror, though. I mean, horror is obviously not everybody's bag. But even, like, you know, high adventure and heroics. Mm-hmm. Some people don't like the high adventure sort of stuff because it's not grounded enough in reality for them. You know?
Right.
It's just that not every game is going to be everybody's cup of tea. So I think the first thing you need to do when you're introducing a new game system to your group or to your potential group in general is identify what type of game it is, because it's not always clear sometimes. You know?
Right.
I mean, like for instance, Savage Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
It's a genre-less game system.
Yeah.
It's arguably tactical because it does lean into things like miniatures and you know, actual like map mini play. Mm-hmm. But it's genreless. It's a system agnostic, you know, or setting agnostic system like Fate is. So beyond that, it's really what stories are you telling with it?
Right.
You know? And so you kind of run into your like, is it scary? Is it adventure heroic? Or is it somewhere kind of in the middle, which usually ends up being tactical or gritty?
Right.
And then, honestly, you just have to kind of shop it around.
Yeah, you have to think about, okay, if I want to do something that's tactical and gritty, do you know your players well enough to know that they're going to enjoy that? Mm-hmm. That they're going to enjoy 20 minutes of combat? Or having minis on a table and dealing with crunching moment to moment to get through something.
Right. Right.
Okay, so yeah, you're in your safe house, and you bust out the front door on your way to something. You get 2 blocks away, turn the corner, and there's a squad of 6 guys, one with a heavy machine gun. And, okay, let's see if they notice you.
Right, now it's all roll initiative.
Right.
And now we pull out a grid, now we pull out,
Right. And 40 minutes later, 3 of you are severely injured. 1 of you is tending to them. The other person's literally resuscitating somebody. You've got the group down.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally piles of guns and ammo laying around. One guy is literally still shooting off rounds because you hit him in his ammo pack, on the ground, and the silence befalls. And was that cool for your entire group?
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's your sales pitch right there.
Mm-hmm.
When you're describing something in a setting, like when I sell 7th Sea to people,
Mm-hmm.
I sell it as a movie scene.
Yeah.
That each moment I'm effectively moving the camera and focusing on players and giving people narrative and letting them roll piles of dice to come up with something amazing, and at the end of the day, you don't die, you wash up on shore because your ship capsized, and okay, now you're somewhere else. You didn't, unless it's literally a villain stabbing you through the chest. And even then, there's that moment where you can literally grab his blade while he's doing it, smile at him, and then grab him by the shirt and jump off the building with him.
Right.
You have that option.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different system, but it's how you sell the scene.
And actually, I'm kind of glad you brought up 7th Sea, because that's like kind of your other dichotomy. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just horror to adventure to crunch in the middle, but you've also got that kind of access of crunch to narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And again, neither one is better than the other.
Yeah.
But, there are some players who like crunchy rules because they set hard rules for what can and cannot happen and how it needs to happen.
Yep.
And it gives them a very good grasp on what is quote-unquote real within the game.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some people who really like narrative play, where it's like, look, I don't want to have to pull out a slide rule and a graphing calculator to figure out my initiative this turn.
Right.
Just tell me I fired my gun and I hit him,
Right.
And just tell a story,
Right.
And there are some players who can move up and down that axis, just fine.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to lay on the narrative side of that axis.
Very much so.
But yeah, I like me some crunch sometimes.
Yeah.
I like 5th edition. I like the tactical feel of that game.
I mean, you play BattleTech.
Yeah, I play BattleTech.
That's hardly
all
crunch. That's literally crunch.
It's all crunch.
We throw on top of the crunch a little narrative,
right?
For flavor. But realistically, it's pure crunch.
Yeah,
versus...
you can literally just put battle mechs on the board and just play it as a board game if you want to. You don't even need the role play. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. But on the other side of the scale, you do have the pure narrative, where basically it's just describing actions, and then the real rules of the system is who gets to determine what happened at the end versus who gets to determine who's there.
Right.
And that's pure narrative. That's great. But yeah, I agree. I think you can go either way, but it's about how you sell that scene. And I think we've done it. We do it subconsciously when we're presenting stuff to other people. And I'm like, well, okay, so you want to do this thing in Savage World. All right, well, give me, what's the difference? And you're like, okay, well, basically what it's going to come down to, and you describe dice and the scene all in one breath.
Yep.
And that's like, oh yeah, I could totally see that. So what's this whole initiative thing with cards? Like, I don't get that.
Yeah.
And you're allowing those questions to be asked and people to get comfortable with it, but a lot of people just need to see it. And so I think I found that a lot of times, because we have the advent of the internet and there's a ton of people who do record their shows, their games, it's a good alternative to being able to, you have your sales pitch, but at the same time you say, and this is the system.
Right.
So why don't you go watch this? It's not perfect of what we're going to be doing, but it is the system being ran.
Yeah.
And this is how they run it. So.
And I would say probably if you are going to do that, make sure you find a link to something that is representative of what your vision of it is and is up to the quality that you want to present to somebody.
Yeah.
Rather than just say, oh, go search Savage Worlds.
Don't.
Because it's a grab bag then.
Yeah. And so, well, the same thing with 7th Sea. I've seen a lot of different people run 7th Sea. I can flat out say they're all different. everybody runs it a little differently in the way that they do their narratives and the way that they even between first edition and second edition, there's critical differences.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to get confused in it, but it gives you a general flavor. But it's always better to pick which depiction you wish to show. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So I think too, and we kind of talked about this how not every game is for every player, but I think that means that not every gaming group is going to look the same.
True.
If you're going to change groups, or if you're going to change games, you're almost certainly going to change groups.
Yes.
At least in a small way. You may lose only one player and pick up another, but
at the same time, you also may have to tell people, like, I don't think this game's going to be your game. Because they may hear from somebody else and be like, dude, you know how much I love, loot and shoots. And you're like, well, that's not what this is going to be.
Right. We're trying to move it away from the video game and get to the core of what it's trying to represent.
Right.
As more of a realistic, post-apocalyptic, you are the last vanguard against society falling apart,
Yeah.
And it's falling apart anyways.
Yeah, and you may have to politely say no.
Yeah.
To some players, and that's hard. That's really hard. I can tell you a number of times when I've had to do it, like, and it's always better to do it in person. Don't just send in a text message or something.
Yeah.
That's like the worst.
It's almost like breaking up with somebody. It
kind of is.
Yeah.
Because you feel like you're letting them down because they are very close to you.
And they genuinely just want to be involved.
Yes.
They're like, hey,
They
we're
enjoy your
friends.
stuff.
I want to be doing friend stuff with you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you're like, man, you're just going to have a bad time. Like, this is not going to be your game.
Nox, hold on, let me do this real quick. Nox, there are totally board games that you can RP. I can tell you when I was a kid, role-playing in Monopoly was a thing. Mm-hmm. Like, so many times I did that in Monopoly. Game of Life was another big one.
Yeah.
It just happened. But I would have to say, I want to say it was Heroes. There was a game called Heroes, and then there was Talisman. Was the other one that was like it.
Sounds familiar, but I don't.
Yeah. So those games were like board game versions of Dungeons and Dragons, effectively.
I mean, there was Hero Quest.
Yeah.
Back in the day, and then as a fan of the Cthulhu mythos, I got Eldritch Horror.
Yep.
Which I still want to get together with you guys and play that. That you can definitely involve a little bit of role playing with that.
Totally. So yeah, totally can do it. So and that's just to say that they're systems. They're just a game system. With dice and pieces. That's it.
I'm mixing Dream Date with Mall Madness, and I'm totally dating Billy.
Oh, Lord.
That's amazing.
Lord. So, let's see, where do we leave off? We were...
saying no.
Saying no, that's right.
But alternately, some of your players may reject you.
Oh, yeah, totally.
They're like I said earlier, where I was like, hey, Sean, you're my biggest cheerleader and my biggest supporter and the love of my life. Why don't, let's do this thing I'm super enthusiastic about. And he looked me in the eye and was like,
Yeah.
No, have fun.
Or you don't realize where they are. Like, I've got 4 games I'm playing in right now.
Yeah.
I don't have time. I really want to.
Yeah.
But, like...
It's a shame. If you'd have asked me 3 months ago, I'd have said yes.
Yeah, or, like, maybe if one of these folds up and, doesn't happen, I could jump in. But at the same time... Yeah.
Sean says, I'm not rejected. You're rejected.
But, yeah, that's the other hard thing is that if you had your mind set on someone joining the game and they're just not available... or they don't have the spoons or the time or the endeavor to jump into it, That's another hard thing you have to deal with, especially if it was somebody that you were counting on joining.
Yeah.
So.
That's when you're like, oh,
and
wow,
like,
this
do
is,
you
this
put it
is
off?
the game I made for this person, with this person in mind. And then you get rejected by them, and you're like, well, crap,
It's a little bit of a thing, but at the same time, you keep up with it. Don't let your world die just because one person didn't show up.
Exactly, and you'd be surprised. You may actually do that where you're like, oh wow, this is totally the game for this person, and then they can't show up for it, and you find that without them in the group, you still have an amazing group that is super enthusiastic and has just a ton of fun, and it's no less fun for having that person absent. So.
Yep. So
all right, so. You found your players, you shopped the game to them, and you've got a group now.
Indeed.
And now you need to go through the arduous task of introducing the game to them.
So, before even the 0 session, like, one of the things that I've found is a lot of the quote unquote newer systems. D&D's done this now with 5th edition. City of Mist has done this. I want to say Urban Shadows did this as well.
Okay.
They'll come out with like a free or very inexpensive like kickstart for the game.
Oh
like
yeah,
a quick start,
$5.
Yeah, and it usually has the character sheets, a quick mission, or a write-up that shows like actual play and role play involved in it, so you get to see the dice and the actions.
Yeah.
A lot of times role-playing books will have that in there, where like you'll get to a part that talks about combat, and they'll give you like a write-up of the combat between the characters and the players, and the dice rolls, which is wonderful for people who can't necessarily think about all the rules and how they interact, but kind of want to like, how does that play out? Those types of guides are so worth their gold.
Oh yeah. I remember we were getting introduced to Cities of Mist or City of Mist originally. I remember looking over the rules for it and going,
quick start.
This is really abstract. Like I'm having a tough time grasping it because it's so abstract. Like
right.
I do need a little crunch.
Yep.
As a treat.
Yeah.
You know, and when then I did see the actual play like transcript of like, okay, here's how combat happens.
Yep.
And it was written out as like a transcript of the discussion that happens at the table.
Yes.
Of like, okay, so my character is going to turn into a ball of lava, essentially.
Right.
Okay, well, you need to make a roll for that. So what aspects are you using, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
And it goes from there. And then I was like, oh, okay, I see the value in having that, and I see how these things tie together.
Yep.
You know.
And you got their character sheets, so you could look at their character sheet while reading along with that, and it tied everything together nicely. And I think that's justice that systems are doing exceptionally well these days. I don't think those are really weighted enough when it comes to trying to bring people in, especially people who've never gamed or who have gamed systems that just don't have the same connectivity. For instance, I've met people who basically have played high fantasy, low crunch games where it's almost pure narrative, but they go to play D&D and they're like, what? Like, what do I have to do for a spell? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Usually I just say I'm casting a spell.
Yeah, like
I roll 2 dice, and it's either a success or a failure. I'm
There's
like,
these weird spell slots. What the hell is a saving throw?
Right.
Yeah.
What am I keeping track of here? I mean, I'm down, but like, what do I do?
Wait, hold on. If this guy rolls higher than a 15, my spell just does nothing?
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, but at the same time, giving them that extra design helps a lot.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is and this is kind of the other hard part about it is that some people get exceptionally overwhelmed when there's so much information being set forth.
Yeah.
If you present, like, Palladium's a perfect example. If I'm bringing Rifts to the table, and I literally come to the, -2 session, the character creation discussion session, with 9 books.
Oh, yeah.
And I say, okay, what do you want to be? And they're like, I don't even know what the world is. Yeah. What is that? But again, you've got photos, you've got concepts you can talk through, you can show them pictures. And I think that was one of the things that Vampire the Masquerade did really well. And I think 7th Sea does really well, because as you're literally flipping through the book,
really good artwork to
the
kind of
artwork,
spark conversation
and just
inspiration.
little discussion boxes that basically say, like, well, this is Eisen. These are the people of Eisen. Here's some pictures of the people of Eisen. You can kind of get a feel for who they are, and you're like, okay, yeah, I think I kind of like a fully armored dude. That'd be pretty, awesome.
Yeah. And when I was thinking about this earlier today, I was thinking like it's kind of broken down to like 3 different categories for me.
Okay.
So you've got your really familiar settings. Okay. Familiar settings. It's settings that are ubiquitous in some way. They have multiple avenues that you can approach them from, either because they're real world or close enough to the real world that you can just say real world plus zombies.
Right.
Oh, okay. It's the zombie apocalypse. We all know what that looks like by now through pop culture.
Yep.
And if you don't know what it looks like, just imagine the real world and add zombies.
Yep.
Like my D&D game, The Elder Scrolls. It's had multiple different video games. There's a series of videos out on it. There's wikis. You can approach The Elder Scrolls from a multiple different angles across probably 2 decades now at this point.
Well, not to mention the fact that it has some assets that are pretty ubiquitous, like Skyrim.
Yeah.
Like, most people have heard the term Skyrim. and have an idea of what it is.
Right. Even if you haven't played it, you've probably interacted with it at least tangentially.
If you haven't seen the Frusrota shirts,
yeah, yeah.
You haven't been around this century, so
or like Wheel of Time. It's a major fantasy property with 14 books plus a short story in the series. If you say Wheel of Time, lots of people know what you're talking about. They
Very
may not
much so.
exactly know the setting, but at least there's going to be a lot of people out there. You could easily look up a few YouTube videos at the snap of your fingers of break down the Wheel of Time world for me in 30 seconds or less.
right.
You know?
No, I agree.
All right, so you've got your approachable settings like that. So those are going to have a lot of media about them. However, you're going to come with the risks of setting false expectations.
Very much so.
Because they are so storied and have so much history behind them, fans of the series are going to come in with certain expectations, or at least could come in with expectations.
Also, a misunderstanding of where in a timeline, especially when you're dealing with something like I'll throw even like Batman. It's going to be in the DC universe. Suddenly, you've got two people arguing at the table about which timeline,
right?
Which Batman are we dealing with?
Which
in
alternate
Gotham?
universe are we in?
Don't even get into Marvel.
Oh, yeah.
Geez. Yeah, I mean, and that's where things can get very, very challenging to try and say that you have to bring down the specificity and or eliminate things.
Right. So you have to be very specific. Like my Elder Scrolls game, the Elder Scrolls games span across 3 different eras at this point, and probably about 1,000 years worth of history between the two of them.
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls Online is like early 2nd era, and Skyrim is like early 4th era.
Yeah.
200 years into the 4th era,
right?
Which is 200 years after the Oblivion, Skyrim, or Elder Scrolls 4, etc.
Right, but again,
so it's very important to point out where you are in that timeline. You know.
Yep.
So you do need to
By the way,
down.
Nerd.
I know.
So
Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
But so you really do need to nail down where the particulars of those settings.
Sure. Okay.
And kind of nip those preconceived notions in the bud.
Right.
Okay.
And answer the questions.
Now, then you've got your proprietary settings. Okay. Proprietary settings are things like Legend of the Five Rings. 7th Sea would be one of these. Forgotten Realms is a good one.
Sure.
Where they are established and they're maybe even popular, but they haven't bled out into things like books and movies. And I mean, Forgotten Realms kind of is bled out into
very much
books
so.
and stuff like that. And I'm sure there's probably some 7th Sea novels out there.
Very much so.
But again, we're not talking like saturated into pop culture. Like, I can't sit down and watch the 7th Sea movie.
No.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who haven't heard of 7th Sea.
Oh, quite a few.
Even in gaming culture.
Yep, very much so.
Most everybody's heard of Forgotten Realms and stuff. Maybe Forgotten Realms is maybe a bad idea. But what I'm saying is there's no Forgotten Realms movie.
True.
I guess Neverwinter Nights is set in Forgotten Realms. It's probably a bad example. Again, bad example.
Yeah,
but...
I mean, I think it sits between the two, definitely, because you tend to have a lot of places where Forgotten Realms sits and different information about it, but it definitely is an established world. You can grab a book and read through it and have a good idea of where you're at, and it's still as almost as accessible as the previous, but not nearly to the breadth of data.
Not into ubiquity.
Yes.
So you're still going to be looking for wikis. Probably your primary source is going to be the actual books of the game.
Yeah, which are going to be dense.
Which can be very dense.
Back to Rifts is another example where you've got a whole world, just one world, Earth, has like 5-6 books.
At least.
About just Earth.
At least.
So, and that right there makes it very challenging for them to make decisions at even a macro level.
Oh, yeah. So. I mean, I think until we got comfortable with 7th Sea, until I got comfortable with 7th Sea, I found that to be the very same thing, where you were like, oh, it's a high-adventure game, set in kind of an alternate universe Europe. And I'm like, okay, I guess I can run with that. And then you started in with and there's this magic, and then there's the Inquisition, and there's this going on, and there's this going on. And you started throwing like words like Montaigne and Castillo and Eisen, and I'm like, hold on. And you're like, that's alternate universe, France, Spain, and Germany, respectively. And I'm like, okay, I'm kind of getting it,
I'm
but
coming back.
Even just the introductory thing was dense.
It is very dense. It is very dense.
I had to learn all sorts of new terms. I had to learn all sorts of new... And it's on top of the game system I had never touched before. So that's the risk you run. But again, you do have a ubiquity of information available to you because there it is available at least.
Knox makes an interesting question. I don't know if I've ever done this.
Okay.
Guys, we're not playing tonight. Tonight is a lore history session. I don't know. I've never done anything like that, but I don't think that it would be a bad idea in the right context.
I don't know.
I think if you had an established group, like you were doing 5th edition, and I think this leans into your third one, which is homebrew.
Yeah.
I think that's very appropriate. I think a lore session would be appropriate, because it does give you that option where players, and hold me back a little bit on saying this, but especially in a homebrew, it gives your players options to paint in things, and I think that happens in games like Shadows.
Urban Shadows.
Urban Shadows.
Urban Shadows
is
Dungeon World whole apocalypse
yeah,
system,
where you're literally allowing your players to write into the world a little bit. But I think that that would be a good thing to do in those situations, because now you've got this homebrew world. You've got you're talking about how the setting wraps into it and what individual things you've made into it, maybe the lords, the races, how they tie together, things like that.
Yeah.
And as long as that's, players can then be like, oh, well, you said the orcs in this world are very noble. They're almost, they're more noble than the humans are. They've been there longer. So, are they still tribal, or do they have cities? Like, how cultured are they? And you could say, well, the majority of them are cultured, but there still are some tribal groups that hang on to their almost native backgrounds and have those kinds of things.
Yep.
Is that what you're thinking? And that now players can start drawing into the map their niche.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's where those kind of sessions come in. I think those are a little bit of a character session, but at the same time, it is a little bit of lore session.
Yeah, I might do that just like as a full day session 0 sort of thing.
Yeah.
Especially if character creation is a quick process.
Yeah.
In that system, I would definitely consider doing that as part of the session 0 of like, okay, let's talk lore.
Yeah. If it's important.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, if you're doing a crunchy game where most of it's literally based on stats and gear, there's very little role-playing, lore could be minor.
Yeah,
it could be unimportant.
It could.
On the other hand, you could sit there for 3.5 hours and discuss Warhammer 40k lore.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Mm-hmm.
Easily.
Like, why is this specific battle happening between this specific group on this specific planet in this sector of the universe, in this sector of space, among this part, at this timeline? All of that actually has definition in their world.
Oh, yeah.
Building. So, yeah, you can totally get to that level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people love that crap.
So I would say the last thing here, and kind of dovetailing off of this whole lore discussion, is like you said, the homebrew or a really obscure setting.
Mm-hmm.
One that it doesn't have ubiquity in pop culture. Like City of Mist was like this to me.
Yeah,
I needed City of Mist explained to me because other than the name and that it was quote unquote kind of like Fate, I don't know shit about it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and especially with homebrew, because there's literally no published material out of it, because then it wouldn't be a homebrew. So it's largely going to rely on you conveying the lore to your group.
Yes.
In some sort of constructive fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Either providing them, resources to go read on their own, or, like you said here, have a group get together and do a lore lecture.
Yeah.
The big thing that you're going to risk with this one is losing interest due to lack of engagement.
Yes.
Because it puts so much burden on the storyteller to convey those details through storytelling, that if you cannot accomplish the on-the-fly world building and relating in an understandable way what the story is or what the world is all about,
right?
Players are just going to feel lost all the time.
Yes, I agree.
And that's that,
Yeah. Like, where are we again? What is this place?
What's going on? Wait, why was that important?
Right.
What's an Eisenfaust again?
Exactly. Exactly.
That's this big damn steel fist. Oh yeah, yeah.
Panzerhand.
Panzerhand. Yeah. Eisenfaust is a prince.
Yeah, Zinfaust is the local prince, the Iron
Right.
Prince.
Okay. See, I learn. I
You're
learn.
good.
I
You're
can be
good.
taught.
You can be taught.
I can be taught.
It only took you 12 years of gameplay.
Look, I play a Montaigne, okay?
You do. And really, Eisen means nothing to
I
you.
speak with the French accent, and I understand the guns. I do not understand the Eisen.
That's right. It's true. You don't. A lot of people don't, but that's perfectly fine. So all this comes down to kind of the importance of that first session.
Yeah.
And the lead up to said session, making sure that you've got quote unquote hype going up, you've got your players interested, so that when you get to that zero session, they may not have character ideas, they may not have any ideas, and you've got to be able to bring all those resources to bear in such a way that you're not overwhelming them, but you're presenting them with what they need, and doling it out almost like a multi-course meal. Don't necessarily put everything on the table at the same time, because people get overwhelmed.
Sure.
You know, work around the table. Start with somebody you're confident with. You know, for instance, if I was bringing up a new system, I'm not going to start my zero session by talking to somebody who's never played the system, who's, wants to get into the game because it sounds really cool, but at the same time is like really leery about what character they want to be.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn to like you, who instantaneously will have 4 character ideas, and like 2 initiatives into the story already of what you want to throw at it.
There was discussion in the Discord just this afternoon. Technolich and I think Draven also joined in, talking about what type of player you are at the table. And I was actually saying exactly that.
Yeah.
I wait till the end because I'll just play whatever character we need to round out the group, because I will just come up with 4 character concepts in the course of that discussion.
But at the same time, for a storyteller's sake, if you know the system, I'm going to want to lean to you so that the rest of the group, as it spins around the table...
see me as an example.
Exactly. And they know that you're another resource that they could lean over and be like, what did he mean by spell slots?
Yeah.
And now they could say, is that something you're interested in? Well, it sounds complicated. You don't have to do magic. You could actually do it this way. Oh, okay. And now they're a druid or doing something else where they don't necessarily have to worry about it nearly as much.
Yeah, exactly.
It was interesting doing that with... early Shadowrun was that Shadowrun has a lot of crunch.
Oh, it does.
And when it comes down to like, okay, well, what do you want to be? My wife was playing, and she was just like, I don't want anything complicated. And literally, the storyteller looked at her and said, "How about a big hunk of meat?" Okay, I can do that. Who's really lucky? Great. You just have pools of dice, and like your gear is a giant normal bow. But it's giant size because you're a troll.
Yep.
So there you go. And it worked really well for her because, again, she didn't have to deal with all of the technology and magic and, physical adept stuff or cyberware. It was just, I'm a giant hunk of meat.
And I hit things.
And she hit things.
Yep.
And so you have to know your players and have people at the table who can assist.
Yeah, sure.
And lean into idea and design. So...
we actually, believe it or not, I did jot down something on here about kind of doing the lore dump, and what I said was viewing party, actually.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Finding either a pop culture resource, or like we were talking about adventure, Tales of the Aeon Society last week, and so my idea was sit everybody down and watch Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow. It's not perfect, but it's darn close.
It is really good.
It is close enough that you're going to walk away from watching that movie with ideas about what you might want to do in a universe that's similar to that.
Yeah, I think it's a really good example of it. I think I think adventure can lean into an aspect of where was I going to go with this one? Hellboy. Some of the Hellboy movies kind of has a feel of it.
Yeah, it does.
It fits.
I would agree.
Because you've got these moments of definitely narrative that gets an alteration that happens to the world. And I think that's beautiful. I think it's great. So those stories are unique. in the way that they are told.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
those are, I think, perfect examples of that.
You're gonna pitch a 7th Sea game to us and say, okay, it's only gonna be set in Vodachi, so we're gonna come over tonight. We're gonna pop a bottle of wine and watch Dangerous Beauty.
Yep, exactly, 100% without question. Or I'm gonna say it's in Montaigne. We're just gonna watch Three Musketeers, the Disney one, and I'll point out everything as it goes through.
Yep.
Or it's in Avalon. We're gonna watch Brave.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, and because that's the kind of thing that I want to lean into. I want to go into that side of it. So, yeah, there's definitely ways to do that, I would say.
And then I think probably the last bit of things, and you kind of touched on this earlier with the published adventures that usually come with starter sets that are becoming a lot more prevalent nowadays. Gaming, God, I'm just marveling at how much gaming has become accessible
So nice.
over the last 50 years.
Yep. Brings a tear to the eye.
Is that a lot of these things do come with one shots, or you be able to find published modules that are designed as little starter one shots and stuff like that.
Very much so.
And so even if you do have to write it yourself, make your first adventure a milk run. Keep it simple, no huge twists. Just we're gonna get from point A to point B. We're gonna fight some bad guys along the way, or something. Whatever is thematically appropriate for your story.
I'm gonna lean against that. I'm actually gonna say if you're not doing a homebrew, if you are literally going with just a new system that you want to try, go grab a predefined module as a milk run.
Yeah.
Get yourself used to the system using its rule set.
I'm saying write one yourself if you can't find one.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I agree. But keep it simple. You're right.
Yeah, but absolutely keep it simple, just to get everybody acclimated to actually playing the game, and that way you don't have a lot of details, you don't have a lot of role play getting in the way of if you need to stop and figure out a rule because none of you have played this before, you storyteller included, do it.
Or your character, one of the characters has this thing that you didn't realize was a thing.
Right. Right. Okay, well, what does it mean by raises here? Oh, I don't know. Hold on. Raises.
Are we dueling? Is this dueling right now?
Page 57. Yeah. Okay, look that up. Okay. It says you can roll an extra die or whatever.
There you go. Yep.
Sure, okay. And now you know that for the future.
Exactly.
And you didn't stop anything major. You don't have any red herrings or plot twists going on. It's just a casual little thing.
Yeah.
So that I think we're more or less at the end.
Yeah. No, that was good.
All right. We do have we have a question. So I'm wondering if we're almost gonna end up a little bit early, unless we can stretch this answer.
Oh no, we'll have some fun with this.
Okay, so I got called out by our questions by name. So Knox in the Box says, Sarah, for your adventure game, as well as last episode, you recorded a news broadcaster bit to open up the campaign and set its tone. I also did this in our Aberrant game as well. Well, in fact, you helped me with that. A little news report. Well, a bit of flair like this is innovative and adds to the experience. Do you feel like you need to announce that something like this is a special occurrence so that players don't expect the game to be at an energy level you're not prepared to deliver at every time? Or do you just let it happen and let every game's energy level be a surprise? Okay, so the answer to this is a little bit complicated.
I think it's exceptionally complicated, but go right ahead.
So for me, at least, it's a little bit multifaceted. So some of the reasons I go extra with things like this. I mean, the obvious reason is the obvious first reason is that people love it. It gets a really good response. I'm capable of doing it, so I should do it. Okay. On top of that, though, I've kind of got two mindsets of it.
Okay.
The first one being that this is something I enjoy. Storytelling is an art I enjoy. And so I am always looking to up my game. It's one of the reasons why we started this podcast in the first place, is to help other people up their game.
Sure.
We say it right in the intro.
Keep us sharp, too.
Exactly. Keep us sharp. But I figure if I am not always trying to improve myself and improve the storytelling experience that I can offer my players, then to me, I almost feel like I'm being lazy about storytelling.
Complacent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's not an everyone thing. That's not a judgment call if you aren't doing these theatrics. Like, so
No.
don't read that into this like you have to do this or you're a lazy storyteller. I just feel like for myself, the standards I hold me to, that if I'm not trying to up my game and trying to make it a more immersive and engaging and fun experience for everybody, that I am being complacent. So I always look for angles to do that. The second part of it for me is that it keeps me engaged, because especially lately, I have been struggling a lot with my depression. Today especially. Today's been a drag for me. And things like this podcast keep me into a certain schedule. It gives me something I need to get up and do.
Right.
And that is a very useful tool for breaking out of depressive episodes. And so, I mean, we jokingly call this our weekly therapy session, but kind of not.
It kind of is.
Because it gets me here with one of my friends doing something I enjoy. But kind of along those same lines, doing something extra that requires production quality, whether that is printing and painting new miniatures for some unique creatures that I'm going to have as enemies, or building elaborate terrain for my game, or making multimedia things like those news broadcasts for my adventure game, for my Aberrant game. Those keep me engaged, and if I set a day that I need to be, that I need to have it done by, a deadline, because obviously I've got a game, I've got to present it at some point. I can't put it off indefinitely like some of my pet painting projects. I have to get off my tuchus and I have to do it.
Yep.
And even if it gets to the point where I'm looking at it out of the corner of my eye going, crap, that needs to be done 3 days from now.
Right.
It at least pushes me.
Yeah.
And gives me that drive. So, and then the net result is all my players get to experience the fun other end of it, of experiencing it.
Yes.
And it makes it all worth it.
Yeah. From an outsider's perspective on that commentary, I would say, and because I've been your player, it's that when you make the effort, it's noted.
Yeah.
And that energy is transferred. It's a gift.
Yeah.
And I think that beyond the obvious surprise, which sometimes isn't a surprise, we know what's coming, but we want it still.
Oh yeah. It's about the delivery. It's not about the surprise. It's not about me sneaking up on you. It's about the prestige.
I think there's an essence of that to it, but it's also it's just the fact that it's coming and that you're presenting. I think that has its own weight to it as well. So my take on this, I'm going to start at the beginning of this with the question, and that is that do you do it every time? And I would say that you have to know your group. I would say if you are a showman and you want to make a show of it every time, regardless of the people who are there in front of you, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Bringing an A game every single time is a great energy work. It's a good thing to do. It keeps you sharp. Definitely does all those things for you. The thing that it is for me, and this is going to sound a little odd, and I'm going to kind of work through it, is that you have a relationship with your players.
Yeah.
That relationship is just as it sounds. It needs to be cultivated, it needs to be honest, and it needs to have flavor and spice to it. And so when you bring that to it, it comes back to you.
Oh, absolutely.
I
like that angle. I really like that angle.
I can say from decades of playing with people that I know that if I bring them on their worst day but still coming to game, something special. Whether it's I'm going and I'm just going to take this outside of gaming context. If I'm going to my friend's house and I walk in the door, I'm going to say this about a certain friend. If I walk in the door with a cinnamon roll in my hand, she knows it's for her. And whatever she was doing that day, her brain has just changed because I have brought to her something that she wanted that was a little unexpected, but it was a little bit of glory that brought her a little energy. Now, that energy is going to come back.
Yeah.
If I do the same thing at my table, if I bring a feeling of excitement or I make something special, or I bring a certain level of audio, or I have a certain map, I have certain minis, and I have a sense of excitement about it, that's going to translate into the relationship.
Yeah.
And that's going to come around. Now, that may not come around immediately, but it's going to bring them back to the table again and again. And them coming back to the table gives me a reason to keep being creative.
Oh, absolutely.
So it is a give and take in that. And as a player, when somebody does something like that, the acknowledgement is more than just, wow, that was really cool. You know, sometimes that's all you've got energy-wise, but just coming back to the table because it was cool is something for them to see.
Yeah.
You know, I love it when my players bring painted minis and set them down in front of me, and it, you know, for my game. Like, that's excitement to me.
Oh, yeah.
Like now you're invested.
Right.
You know, we always say the session 3 is the day of investment. Now you're in a game.
Well,
you know?
because what that says to you is, I love your game enough to have put this amount of energy and time and love into it.
Exactly.
So, basically what you're saying is that this level of production quality, this level of going the extra mile, is like the flowers and chocolate of gaming.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is very much so. You can have a bland game, or you can bring a little extra. You can up your game a little bit. You can up your game as a player a little bit, and really show thanks for how everything comes together. And that comes out in the end. It shows. So I think that's the difference. I'm not saying it's a difference, but I think it's a different view that I have to it.
Yeah. I guess mine's a little more focused on myself, just to give myself the motivation.
And I'm not saying that those same motivators aren't in me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm just looking at the next point, which is the connection point.
Absolutely, and I think that's something I didn't say in my own, but I think I was thinking it is that okay, you may crunch to get a bunch of miniatures speed painted for your thing, but I'll tell you what, when you plop those things down fully painted and awesome looking on your on your table, and your players have never seen them before,
and they're snapping
and
pictures.
Every one of them is like, "Holy crap, Sarah!
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is so awesome!" I'm like, man, hearing that from your players is just just puts whatever you spent getting those things done, puts it right back in your tank, and then
exactly. And that's a great feeling. That's a great feeling, no matter who you are.
Because look, don't get me wrong, I love storytelling. Obviously, I love storytelling, but. Man, what I love most is just giving that sort of enjoyment to my players. It's when my players step away from my table exhausted, like they've just had the best meal of their lives, and go, "Holy crap!"
Or the end of the game comes with them going, "Is it effing 9 o'clock?
Yeah.
We've been here for 12 hours?"
Exactly.
The answer is yes, and we had pizza 6 hours ago.
Yeah.
Man, am I tired? But oh my God, that was worth it.
That was so great. Like when you have those moments and when you see them, do that, like it was all worth it.
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
All worth it.
So I would say I hope that answers your question, Knox. As far as I think your question was long but appropriate. So, do you bring it every time? Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
If you have the energy for it.
If you've got the energy, do it.
Look, and I don't think there's any expectation that we always have the energy for it. I think there's definitely there's the assumption of friendship at the table
Always.
that we talk about, and we are all friends.
And the need for honesty, definitely.
And the need for honesty. And if you don't have it in you, you don't have it in you. And I think your players will understand that. I don't think you're letting anybody down by not constantly bringing that energy.
So next week's topic is actually going to be a contributor topic.
Yep.
We're going to be talking about hard and soft storytelling. And Sarah and I got in a little bit of a back and forth on this of different opinions. So next week's going to be fun.
Yeah.
on where we take this.
We both have strong opinions on this. So
I'd say they're relatively strong opinions, but I think, but we came to a good understanding, and I think it'll be a fun discussion when it comes around to it next week. So
hard storytelling and soft storytelling, the devil's in the details. So you can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram, also @ST_Conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can listen to us at mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. We'd love to have you.
You can also find our link to our site on and to our Discord in our Twitter. That's storyteller-conclave.blueberry. That's BLUBRRY.net. We'd like to thank our Patreon members, Knox, Sam, and the Arcane Asylum especially. Thank you so much to all of you out there who help us month in and month out keep this thing rolling, and we appreciate it. Our pre-show music is that you heard earlier today, which we will be doing again next week, is I think it's pronounced Madan. You can find that at freemusicarchive.org/music/Madan. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrogmusic.weebly.com. And our outro, which you're hearing now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find that at soundcloud.com/midairmachine/treks.
And I want to also give a big shout out to our families as always. Vicky and Sean, thank you for supporting us. All of our friends who've sat with us at our tables throughout the years and given us all these great experiences. And to you, every one of our listeners, we love you. Stay safe. Yes. And good night.
Good night.